Hello there, and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, and today we're talking about the most difficult plant in the world to grow, whether that's hydroponically or in soil. Now, it's often said that the hardest, most difficult plant to grow in the world is wasabi, and that's absolute nonsense. I've grown thousands and thousands of wasabi plants. It's really easy to grow once you've controlled a few environmental variables. You just don't let it get too hot during the summer, and it's really easy. It's a brassica. Don't let it get stagnant. Don't leave it in stagnant water. Make sure it's in running water or fresh, moist compost, and you'll grow wasabi easily. Doesn't even need a mycorrhiza because it's a brassica. It's simple. So definitely not wasabi. What I think is the most difficult plant in the world to grow is actually also the plant with the largest flowers in the world. So a single flower, not an inflorescence. An inflorescence is like a group of flowers all put together. For that's the Titan arum. But the plant with the biggest flower is Rafflesia arnoldii, also known as the corpse flower or the giant padma, not panda, padma. And there are a number of factors that make this plant really, really difficult to grow. The first is that it is a parasite. It is what's called a holoparasite, in that it doesn't have any leaves, it doesn't photosynthesis, it doesn't contain any chlorophyll. You wouldn't even know, if you weren't an expert, that it's actually a plant because it's not green, it's not got any roots, it's not got any shoots, it's not got any leaves, but it does produce the world's biggest flower. Now, that's interesting because you will find with most parasitic plants, their flowers are extremely ornate and large. That's because they don't have to go to the effort of photosynthesizing to get their sugars. They are thieves, and just like thieves in the real world, they're very ostentatious with their displays. And so this is basically the equivalent of driving around in a 7 Series BMW or a Porsche 911 Turbo. This is the Rafflesia arnoldii, the world's largest flower. Now, it's called the corpse flower because it tricks pollinators into thinking that it is almost like a dead animal. It gives off a pungent smell. It looks like a massive flesh wound. So really, really lovely. And the reason it uses lots of energy is because to create those sort of decomposing fleshy smells requires a lot of energy, and often these flowers have to heat up because those chemicals that are the same chemicals that mimic the decaying tissue are not very volatile. It means they don't float around in the air much unless the air is hot, and so they have to heat up as well. So the Rafflesia plant, I'm just checking if it actually does that. Yes, they heat up in a process called thermogenesis, so I wasn't too far off there. But what makes it difficult to grow? Well, obviously, it's a obligate parasite, and it lives on a very specific vine in the Indonesian rainforest. Is it Indonesia? Yeah, I should have done my homework here. At Borneo, Sumatran rainforest. So both Indonesia and Malaysia share Borneo, don't they? So if you were trying to grow this plant, you would need a vast specimen of the vine that it grows on. So the Tetrastigma angustifolium vine. So you need to grow the vine, and then you would need to infect that vine with the Rafflesia plant. But that's not the only complication. The vine it grows on is obviously a vine, so it needs something to grow up. So you'd either have to have a network of supports, or you'd have to have another tree or something like that, a rainforest tree, for it to grow on. So there's a number of different complicating factors there. You've got a vine that needs support, and then you need to infect the plant with the Rafflesia, probably get some seeds and that. So it grows the Rafflesia plant grows as a mass of thread-like strands of tissue completely embedded within and in intimate contact with the surrounding host cells of the vine. So it's not like a separate plant. It's sort of intertwines with it and parasitizes it from within. Pretty disgusting. Amazingly, it's reported that the flowers open with a hissing sound, just to make it more disgusting. It looks like something from the Alien movie as well. So I've probably inspired the eggs from the Alien movie as well. So we say it's the world's largest flower, about 1 meter wide, and can weigh up to 11 kilos. That's 24 pounds in old money or American money. I've never seen the plant myself. I have seen an example of it. One of the most famous examples is a preserved specimen at Kyoto Botanical Gardens, and I've got a picture of me next to that. If you go on the Wikipedia page for Rafflesia, it's listed there. That might even be my photo. Is it my photo? Let's have a look. Who took that photo? No, it's not my photo. Can't take credit for it. There are a few of my photos there on botanical sites on Wikipedia. Then if you've gone to all that effort of growing it, the flowers only remain open for 4 days. So if you were thinking of having a tourist attraction, then you could only open your gates for 4 days before it withered away, which is no good. It's, as I say, it's never been grown outside of its native habitat. It's one of the reasons we need to preserve rainforests like that in Borneo. There is a specimen at Boga Botanical Gardens in West Java, Indonesia, and that's the only one that's ever sort of bloomed under managed conditions. But even then, I would imagine that's still within its native range. And I'm sure Boga Botanical Gardens was once a rainforest itself. So yeah, I would say this is definitely the most difficult plant to grow, whether in soil or in hydroponics. The flowers are dioecious. So we know there's male and there's female plants. And so that makes it even more complicated, because that means you would need a male plant and a female plant to be flowering at the same time in order for you to get viable seeds. And these plants are rare anyway. And so to get 2 plants flowering at the same time makes it even more complicated. And that's why there's not many seeds of Rafflesia arnoldii around. Although I'm sure on eBay, there's loads to buy on eBay. Absolute cesspit of shit seeds as it is. So even if you did get a male and a female plant flowering very close together, and successful pollination between the two, and those flowers, remember, only last for 4 days, then you've got to wait for the fruit to develop to get seeds. That takes 6 to 7 months for them to mature. However, when they do mature, each berry contains 400 to 600 tiny seeds, so that's good. And small mammals like shrews and rodents tend to eat those. They're a lipid-rich fruit, and I would imagine they're probably like other parasitic plants like mistletoe, in that they're sticky, and then they irritate the mammal that eats them to wipe their rectum on the vines around where they are defecating, so that the seeds get embedded on the Tetrastigma vines that they want to infect. And that's how a lot of parasitic plants propagate, is they produce sticky seeds that irritate the animals that eat them, and then it makes them rub their anuses, their whatever you want to call them, on the plants that they wish to infect. Isn't this a lovely episode of Hydroponics Daily? Sorry for that. So there you go, what I consider to be the most difficult plant in the world to cultivate. If you think there is one that's even more difficult, that is not extinct, then let me know. The other plant with the largest claim for the largest flower is the Titum arum, and that's a inflorescence, and so that's an arum flower, and that's much easier to grow. You'll find this in many large botanical gardens, especially places like Kew Gardens. And when it flowers, it often makes it into the news. Lots of press releases about it, and people go and see it. It actually got its name from, who was it? David Attenborough. Make sure I get the right Attenborough. David Attenborough, the famous naturalist, and he was about to do a television program, The Private Life of Plants, for the BBC. And this plant didn't have, the Amorphophallus titanum, the Titan arum, didn't have a common name. And because it was the BBC, and it was in the late 80s, early 90s, he couldn't go on television and possibly say the English translation of its scientific name, Amorphophallus, which I think translates as giant penis or something like that, giant phallus. And so he had to come up with another name, and he came up with the Titan arum. And that's interesting. So David Attenborough, actually a lot of plants and animals and insects and things are named after David Attenborough, because he's inspired a lot of naturists. But he actually came up with the common name for the plant because he couldn't be on television talking about phalluses. So that's interesting. That one is far more easy to grow, but still quite difficult. And I don't know if anyone's ever grown it hydroponically. I would imagine it's so big it would be very difficult to grow hydroponically. So let me know if you know of any of the difficult plants to grow. As always, if you found this interesting, obviously it's not going to be useful because no one's going to be growing Rafflesia hydroponically. But if you found it interesting, then, and it's not the worst podcast you've ever listened to, please do give us an Apple podcast review because it will shoot us up the charts. And we've stayed consistently now in the top 40 of gardening podcasts. And so that's been really good, and it's helping getting the word out about hydroponics, especially as we go into autumn and the other gardening podcasts senesce and wilt and die away. We can stay strong in the top 20, hopefully, of gardening podcasts. Thank you very much for listening. Until tomorrow, goodbye.